Okay, Math 12A. I was going to start into Chapter 9. However, a bunch of questions came in from Section 8.6. So I want to do that sort of as a review for your test. Speaking of your test, it's been requested that we do it on Wednesday, but could we do it a little later? So I'm asking whether or not 11 o'clock in the morning would work for people. I will also put that in Hangouts and ask the question there. I will also put it on Google Classroom. So you should be asked about 5, 6 different ways, okay? Sorry, trig. So the questions that were asked, there were a lot of them. And in fact, someone asked me number 10, which wasn't even in the homework that was due today. But anyway, 10, 20, 27, 29, 32, 34, and 36. So that's a lot of them. So we're going to go over those. Hopefully they won't take too awful long. And I'm just looking, there she is, just looking for Harriet. All right, so we're going to start at number 10 and we're just going to go through them. So number 10 is a right angle triangle, and I know why this one is asked. So number 10 is a right angle triangle, and on this one they say this is 121 and this is 187. Now, they didn't actually ask us to solve the whole thing. They simply asked for what is this angle right here, which is angle X. So because it's right angle, we're going to use SOHCAHTOA, sine, cosine, tangent. And because we know the adjacent side and the hypotenuse side, we are going to say the cos ratio, using X as our reference angle, is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse side. So we're going to bring this cos over here, and we're going to do arc cos of 121 over 187. And so I'm just going to go to my calculator, and I'm going to go shift cos of 121 over 187. And it gives me 49.67, so 49.7 degrees, it said, round to the nearest tenth. So that's number 10. Jumping over to 20. Number 20 gives us a triangle. This time it is not a right angle triangle. It tells us that this angle is 136. It tells us that this side is 27.3, and it tells us that this is 16.8. It labels this M, N, and L. And it wants us to find angle L to the nearest tenth of a degree. So again, I'm only looking for the angle. I don't have to solve the whole triangle. I just have to find this. Now, I know side L is 16.8. I know angle N is 136. And I know side N is 27.3. And I know I can't use SOHCAHTOA because it's not a right angle triangle. So I either have to use law of sines or law of cosines. Because I know everything about the letter N, I know both the angle and the side, that means that I can use law of sines. So law of sines would be side N over sine of angle N is equal to side L over sine of angle L. So 27.3 over sine of 136 is 16.8 over sine of L. I cross multiply, so I multiply the 27.3 with sine L. So I multiply the 16.8 with sine of 136. So I'm going to divide this side by 27.3 so that sine L is by itself. So I'm going to divide this side by 27.3. Now if you want, you can work out what that is, because you can actually put 16.8 times sine of 136, hit equals. Get what the top is first, and then put divided by 27.3. For most calculators, if you put in 16.8 times sine of 136 divided by 27.3, it will do one of two things. It will do 136 divided by 27.3 and do sine of that, or it will do sine of 136, it would divide it by 27.3, it would take that answer and then multiply it by 16.8. None of those things do you actually want it to do. So I put brackets around the top. All right. Once you get whatever that is, and I'm going to just put it all in my calculator at once, I'm going to move this sine over here. So it's going to be arc sine of whatever that was. So I'm just going to put it in my calculator. 16.8 times sine of 136 divided by 27.3, and then shift sine of my answer. I get 25.3 degrees because it's an angle. So that's number 20. 27. Says you're going to solve the triangle. So that means find everything that they don't give you, and they give you triangle ABC. Do not care how you draw it. And don't care where the A or the B or the C goes, does not matter. And since I don't really know anything about it, I'm just going to draw a generic triangle. Angle A is 84 degrees. Angle C is 40. And side A is 5.6. So we have to find everything that's missing. What's missing? Well, angle B is missing. Side B is missing. And side C is missing. I'll put it down here. So there are three things that I have to find. How you go about it is up to you. The only thing is you can't use SOHCAHTOA because you do not know that this is a 90-degree triangle, because they did not tell you that one of the angles was 90 degrees. So you cannot make the assumption that one of them is. So the first thing I would do is I would actually figure out angle B first, because if I know that one's 84 and that one is 40, 180 minus 84 minus 40 is going to be 180 minus 84 minus 40 is 56. So this is 56 degrees. All right, I'm gonna find side B. Now I know everything there is to know about A. I know angle A and I know side A, because this would be A. I'm going to use law of sines, and I'm going to say A over sine A is equal to B over sine B. So little a is 5.6, whoops, 5.6 over sine of 84 is B over sine of 56. So I personally would cross multiply. So 5.6 times sine of 56 is equal to B times sine of 84. Now I want B by itself, so I'm going to divide this side by sine of 84. So I'm going to divide this side by sine of 84. I can put all that in my calculator, but I would put brackets on the top just to be sure that my calculator is doing what I want it to do. Times sine of 56 divided by sine of 84, and then yeah, Yeah, that should be it. I get 4.7. They said round answers to the nearest tenth. So 4.7 is what I get for this. So now I need to find C. Again, I knew everything about A, so I'm going to do A over sine A, but for C, I'm going to do C over sine C. So I'm going to do 5.6 over sine of 84 is C over sine of 40. And again, I'm just going to cross multiply. I had a teacher friend once say that they teach their kids to do this. Multiply the two things that are across from each other and divide by the third thing. So you make this little angle thing. So the diagonal things you multiply, you divide by this. See, we ended up doing 5.6 times sine of 56 and then dividing by sine of 84. If that makes sense to you, you can use that as a shortcut. So if not, do out the actual work for it. So I'm going to do 5.6 times sine of 40. And I'm going to divide that by sine of 84. And I get 3.6. So C is 3.6. Now I'm not checking my answers at the back of the book. I'm assuming that I'm hitting all the buttons correctly. If I screw something up, it's likely because I hit a wrong button. My methods are right. Okay? That was 27. I assume that 29 is the same instructions. Yes, it is. So let's look at 29. We have triangle LMN. So again, who cares? LMN. And angle M is 62. Side L is 16.9. And side M is 15.1. So this is M, this is L. So what am I missing? What do I not know? I do not know angle L. I do not know angle N. And I do not know side N. So those are the three things I'm going to have to find. It's up to you how you want to find them. Luckily, I know everything about M. So that means I can, in fact, use law of sines. Yay. So I'm going to find angle L first because I know side L. So I'm going to say M over sine M equals L over sine L. And so M is 15.1 over sine of 62 is side L, which is 16.9 over sine of L. So again, I'm going to cross multiply the two that I know and divide by the one that's left over, or you can just go about cross multiplying and doing the visual that you may need to do. But I'm going to get sine L equals, and I'm going to do, again, I'm going to cross multiply the two that are diagonal to one another. So 16.9 times sine of 62. And then I'm going to divide by the piece of information I still have there. So I'm going to divide by 15.1. And that's going to give me like 0.988, and it keeps on going. So I'm going to move this sign over here, and I'm going to do shift sign or arc sign. So second function sine of my answer. I get 81.2. And they did say round to the nearest tenth. So this is 81.2. Now I'm going to find angle N, and that one's easy because I know that the triangle has to add up to 180. M is 62. L is 81.2. So if I subtract those, 180 minus 62 minus 81.2, that's going to give me 36.8 degrees. And then to figure out side n, I'm going to have to use law of sines again. Don't try and use Pythagorean theorem. I've seen that done, but you can't because it says the square of the two sides is equal to, the sum of the square of two sides is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. You don't have a hypotenuse because you don't have a right angle, so you can't use Pythagorean theorem. No hypotenuse, no Pythagorean theorem. So n, I would do, again, I'll do m over sine m equals n over sine n. So I will do 15.1 over sine of 62 is n over sine of 36.8. So I'll cross multiply. So I have 15.1 times sine of 36.8 is equal to, and if I cross multiply, n times sine of 62. So I'm going to divide this side by sine of 62. So I'm going to divide this side by sine of 62. Now I wrote out all the steps, but again, I could have just cross multiplied 15.1 times sine of 36.8 and then divided by the 1 sine of 62. I end up doing the same thing here. I'm just showing the work. So 15.1 times sine of 36.8 divided by sine of 62, I get 10.2. So n is 10.2. All right, that was 29. Moving on, we got 3 more to go. What was I doing? 32, okay. Oh, it's another one of these, solve the triangle. So we have triangle FGH. FGH. Side F is 12.6. Side G is 8.5. I have a bad feeling about this. And side H is 6.3. And I have a bad feeling about this because I cannot use law of sines because I do not know both the angle and the side about any specific letter. So I am stuck using law of cosines. So I can figure out any angle I want, doesn't matter which one, like does not matter at all. So I don't know, I'm going to figure out G. Absolutely no reason, it's the first one I touched. So if I'm going to figure out angle G, that means I'm going to set this up this way. G squared is equal to F squared plus H squared minus 2FH cos of G. If you're trying to figure out G, then G should be the thing isolated on this side. I could have said H squared plus F squared minus 2HF, like those don't matter. But the G, whatever's at the beginning, that's what's at the end. It's not in the middle, okay? So G squared would be 8.5 squared is equal to F squared, so that's 12.6 squared, plus H squared, that would be 6.3 squared, minus 2 times 12.6 times 6.3 times cos of G. So this is going to take some work. So I'm going to do 8.5 squared. That is 72.25. I'm going to take those two, square them, and add them together. So I'm going to do 12.6 squared plus 6.3 squared. That's going to give me 198.45 minus, I'm going to multiply those 3 things together. 2 times 12.6 times 6.3. That's going to give me 158.76 cos of G. Where a lot of people go wrong is they now subtract 198 minus 158. You can't do that. This is one whole unit. It's 158.76 cos of G. There is no cos of G here. Those are not like terms. You cannot subtract these two numbers. So what I'm left doing is taking this, moving it over here, and subtracting it. So 72.25 minus 198.45 is negative 126.2, and that's equal to negative 158.76 cos of G. Again, I moved the 198.45. I did not move this minus, so it didn't go anywhere, right? I want to get the cos G by itself, so I'm going to divide by negative 158.76. So I'm going to divide by negative 158.76. So divide by negative 158.76 gives me a, I'm going to go up here, it gives me a horrible number. Gives me like 0.7949, and it keeps on going, and that's equal to cos of G. I'm going to move the cos over here so it becomes arc cos. So shift cos of that big long thing is 37.4. So I've now figured out that angle G is 37.4. Pay attention to some of those things I was drawing your attention to, because those are the places where people mess these questions up. All right, I need to make space, so I'm going to erase this now. So I've figured out G. Now I know everything about G. I know angle G and I know side G. Guess what? Now I can use law of sines. If you want to use law of cosines again, you can. I just don't like law of cosines. So I'm going to do G over sine G is equal to, I'm going to do H over sine H. Again, no reason. I could have done F over sine F. It doesn't make any difference. So I'm going to do G 8.5 over sine of 37.4 is equal to H, which is 6.3 over sine of H. So again, I'm going to cross multiply the two things that are diagonal that I know and divide by this one. So I end up with sine H is equal to 6.3 times sine of 37.4 divided by 8.5, I get 0.45, and it keeps on going. So I'm going to move this sine over here, so I'm going to do arc sine of that. So shift sine of my answer, and I get 26.8 degrees. So now I know H is 26.8 degrees. So to figure out angle F, I could do law of cosines. If you do, that's fine, but I'm going to call you crazy. You could do law of sines. I will call you less crazy, but still crazy. Or I can do, listen, there's 180 degrees in a triangle. I have 26.8 for H. I have 37.4 for G. That will leave me with what F is. So 180 minus 26.8 minus 37.4, that is 115.8 degrees. That's what F should be. All right, that was 32. I would love to think the next one is easier, but I'll bet you it's not. All right, number 3, because everybody was asking me about 34 and 36. Oh, I see why. Yeah. Okay. 34 and 36. There's more than one way to do these. I apologize if I do it a more complicated way than it needs to be. I have a tendency to do that. I have a tendency to find the most complicated way to do something and do it that way. So, if you already did it and you got the right answer and you don't do it the same way I did it, you probably did it just fine. okay? You probably did it just fine. So for number 34, there is a right angle triangle here. That's good news, at least to me. So there's a right angle triangle here. They don't label anything. They just say this is 15.6. And they say this angle in here is 42.2. And this angle right here is 51.8. And they want to know, what is this right here? The length of that part right there. All right. I could do this a couple of different ways. I could do this in such a way where I would have to use law of sines or law of cosines in order to figure it out. One piece of logic I could use is that I could figure out what this angle is, because the whole thing is 180. And so if I do 180 minus 51.8, that tells me what that is. And then I have two angles here, and then I could figure out the third angle here. That seems overly complicated to me though. Here's what I'm actually going to do. I'm gonna figure out, let me just label this A, B, and C, all right? And maybe right here will be D. I'm going to figure out the length from A all the way to C. I'm gonna figure out this. So I'm gonna look at this as one big, giant right angle triangle. That's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna go, listen, I know the opposite side, and I can figure out the adjacent side. This is a right angle, so I can use tan. I can say tan of angle A, which is 42.2, is the opposite side, which is 15.6, over the adjacent side. Now the adjacent side would be this whole thing. Let's call it Y. So over Y. So if I'm going to solve this, Y times tan of 42.2 would equal 15.6. I just multiplied both sides by Y, and I can divide both sides by tan of 42.2. So I would have 15.6 divided by tan of 42.2, and I get 17.2. So Y, this whole thing, is 17.2. The next thing I think I would do is I would actually figure out what C to D is. Let's call that little b, okay? I'm actually going to figure out what that is. Again, same process as up here, but this time, this is my reference angle, still a 90-degree angle. So I know the opposite, I want to know the adjacent, so I would say tan of 51.8 is the opposite side over the adjacent side. I would go all through the same steps as I would here. So I'm going to end up doing 15.6 divided by tan of 51.8. And I get 12.3. So from there to there is 12.3. So if I want to know what this x is, right, really b plus x would equal y, right? This piece plus this piece equals the whole thing. Well, b is 12.3. I'm trying to figure out what x is, and I figured out that y is 17.2. So x would be 17.2 minus 12.3, which is 4.9. So my answer is that x is 4.9. Now again, was that the only way to do that? No. I could have, like I said before, figured out what that angle was, figure out what that angle was, figure out what this side is using SOHCAHTOA and the 51.8. So once I knew what that side was, then I could use the law of sines and I could figure out what that side was. You could do it that way. Doesn't matter. You should still get 4.9. All right? So to me, this is what came into my head first, but I can think of other ways to do it. And if you did it another way, but you still got 4.9, the chances of you fluking out and getting it right, but doing it in a wrong way are very unlikely. So if you got the right answer, you probably did it in some logical fashion. All right. And then I got 36. 36, we have a right angle triangle again. And again, we have a line going here. They tell us this is 125 degrees. They tell us this is 35 degrees. They tell us this is 10. And they want to know x. It seems to me that they are trying to trick you, because I see no purpose at all to this line right here. I see no purpose. Watch. If I just take that out of there, okay? And I gave you a big old triangle and I said this angle's 35, the hypotenuse is 10, and you want to know the opposite side. Can you do that? Well, sure. That's sine of 35 is opposite over hypotenuse, right? So they stuck this in here. And could I overcomplicate my life and figure out a million other things and then do some big fancy math to figure it out? Sure. But why? I can do this. So this is 10 times sine of 35 is equal to x. I don't know what my dogs are barking at. And 10 times sine of 35 is 5.7. All right, those are all the questions that I had given to me. I could go and do another section, but I think that's enough for a Friday, don't you? I think just watching the video is enough. So we're going to leave it there. I will start into chapter 9 on Tuesday. So test on Wednesday, preferably at 11 a.m. If that doesn't work for you, please just let me know. We'll figure something out. But if 11 works, that just eases some pressure off of someone else. That's all. So let's say at this point, and again, I'm going to post this in like 3 different places, so hopefully everybody will get a chance to voice their opinion. But barring it being a problem for somebody, and it could be, but Wednesday at 11, we will have the test. Tuesday, I'm going to post a lesson for section 9.1 that won't be due then until Thursday morning. Okay? And that's it. See you later.